Hey there, curious minds. Welcome to this intellectual journey. There's a philosopher whose ideas are so potent that even today, they feel dangerous. A man who took a hammer and struck at the very foundations of Western morality, religion, and truth. His name is Friedrich Nietzsche, and understanding him isn't just an academic exercise, it's a personal challenge. Nietzsche is the philosopher of yes to life, but also of the abyss. He forced us to confront the most terrifying question. What if the values underpinning our civilization are a sham? What do we do when we discover that God is dead? Today, we're not just going to summarize Nietzsche, we're going to deconstruct and reconstruct him to grasp his true legacy. We'll explore his three most explosive and often most misunderstood concepts. First, the will to power. No, it's not what the Nazis claimed it was. Second, the Overman or Übermensch, Nietzsche's answer to the void left by religion. And third, his most chilling and beautiful idea, the eternal recurrence. This journey won't be comfortable. Nietzsche doesn't write to comfort us, he writes to awaken us. His goal is to force us to reevaluate everything we take for granted. So brace yourselves, because we're about to wield that philosophical hammer to see which idols still stand and which shatter to pieces. Our big question today is, how can we create meaning and affirm life in a seemingly indifferent universe without resorting to old certainties? That's the question that haunted Nietzsche, and it's at the core of his legacy. Let's dive in and find out. Before we plunge into the Nietzschean abyss, a quick note. To bring this narration to life, I've used AI tools to generate the visuals you're seeing. Think of them as a canvas, a way to illustrate the ideas and the atmosphere of what we're discussing. They won't always be a literal representation, but rather a visual accompaniment to let your imagination soar with me. I sincerely hope you enjoy it. To understand his ideas, we must first understand the man. Friedrich Nietzsche was born in 1844 in Prussia. The son of a Lutheran pastor, he was destined for theology, but his brilliance led him down a different path. He became the youngest professor of classical philology at the University of Basel, an astounding feat. But academia simply couldn't contain him. Nietzsche's life was a tragedy of isolation and illness. He suffered from debilitating migraines, vision problems, and chronic pain that forced him to abandon teaching. He became a wandering philosopher, traveling through Europe, writing feverishly in almost total solitude. This solitude, this pain, became the crucible of his philosophy. In 1889, in Turin, Nietzsche suffered a complete mental collapse, allegedly after embracing a horse that was being whipped. He spent the last decade of his life in silence, mentally incapacitated, cared for by his mother and, tragically, by his sister Elizabeth. He died in 1900, just as the 20th century was preparing to distort his work in ways he never would have imagined. Nietzsche's intellectual context was the 19th century, an era of scientific triumphs, the rise of Darwinism, but also of a profound spiritual crisis. German philosophy was dominated by Hegel, who saw history as a rational progression. Nietzsche saw something very different. He saw decline, the twilight of the idols. Let's begin with his most infamous declaration, God is dead. This phrase, which first appears in The Gay Science, isn't a triumphant shout of atheism. It's a cultural observation. Nietzsche, through his character, the madman, announces that we have killed him. Science, the Enlightenment, rationality. We have killed the idea of an absolute foundation for morality and meaning. The terrifying thing about the death of God isn't the absence of a divine figure. It's the absence of the moral compass. If God is the guarantor of what is good and bad, what happens when that guarantee vanishes? On what do we now base our values? Tradition? Reason? Nietzsche saw our entire moral edifice crumbling. The immediate consequence of the death of God is nihilism. This is a key word. Nihilism is the feeling that nothing matters, that life has no inherent purpose, that all values are, deep down, worthless. It's the abyss that opens up beneath our feet. It's the great challenge of modernity. Nietzsche distinguishes two types of nihilism. Passive nihilism, which is resignation. It's the feeling of the last man, the person who only seeks comfort and security without great passions or grand goals. It's the nothing is worth it anymore mentality. It's conformism and apathy. But there's also active nihilism. This is the nihilism Nietzsche embodies. It's the force that, recognizing old values are dead, actively seeks to destroy them. It's the nihilism of the hammer. You have to tear down the ruins of the old temple to build something new. It's a necessary step, a clearing of the ground. This is where his philosophy becomes both dangerous and affirmative. Nietzsche doesn't leave us stranded in nihilism. His philosophical project is the transvaluation of all values. That is, if old values were based on a beyond, heaven, absolute truth, we must create new values based on the here and now, based on life itself. And to understand how to create these new values, we must understand the force that, according to Nietzsche, moves the universe. This is the will to power, der Wille zur Macht. This is without a doubt his most misunderstood and tragically distorted idea. First, let's clarify what it isn't. Thanks to the manipulation of his sister Elizabeth, who edited his posthumous notes to align them with Nazi ideology, the will to power was equated with the desire for military domination, oppression, and tyranny. This is a grotesque caricature of Nietzsche's thought. Nietzsche, in fact, despised German nationalism, anti-Semitism, and mass politics. He called these things herd politics. His will to power is a much more subtle and universal concept. It's a metaphysical and psychological concept. So what is it then? For Nietzsche, the will to power is the fundamental impulse of everything that exists. It's not just Schopenhauer's will to live. It's not merely about survival. It's the will to grow, to expand, to discharge one's own strength, to overcome oneself, to create. Think of it this way. A plant reaching for the light doesn't just want to survive, it wants to flourish, to express its maximum potential. An artist wrestling with a canvas doesn't just want to finish, they want to create something new, to overcome the void. An athlete doesn't just want to run, they want to break their own record. That is the will to power. In human beings, the will to power expresses itself as self-overcoming. It's the force that drives us to transform the chaos of our lives into a work of art. It's the discipline of the thinker, the creativity of the artist, the individual's will to forge their own character, to become what one is. Even knowledge for Nietzsche is an expression of the will to power. We don't seek truth disinterestedly. We seek to interpret the world in a way that increases our feeling of power, control, and meaning. Truth is the interpretation that favors life. This idea leads us directly to his critique of traditional morality. If the will to power is the affirmation of life, Nietzsche asks, does our current morality affirm or deny life? And this is where his analysis becomes truly radical. It's the subject of On the Genealogy of Morality. Nietzsche, the philologist, acts as an archaeologist of words. He doesn't take our concepts of good and bad for granted. He asks, where do they come from? What kind of people invented them, and for what purpose? He discovers that there isn't one morality, but two fundamental moralities in the history of the West. First, there was master morality. This was the morality of the aristocratic classes, of Homeric warriors, of the Romans. In this morality, good was synonymous with noble, strong, powerful, healthy, courageous. Bad, schlecht, was simply the plebeian, the weak, the sickly, the common. Master morality is affirmative. The noble defines himself as good first, and then, as an afterthought, calls bad that which is not like him. It's a morality that springs from the fullness of strength, from the will to power overflowing and asserting itself. But then, Nietzsche says, the most significant event in moral history occurred, the slave revolt in morality. This revolt was initiated, according to him, by the oppressed, the weak, the priests. Unable to overcome the masters by force, they conquered them with cunning. Slave morality, Sklavenmoral, is born of resentment. This is a key French word Nietzsche uses. It's the impotent anger of the weak against the strong. Since the slave cannot be the master, he declares everything the master is, while strong, proud, rich, to be evil. And conversely, slave morality glorifies everything that helps it endure its own existence. Humility, pity, obedience, suffering, patience, these become virtues. Good is no longer the strong, but the docile. It's a morality that says no to life, to instinct, to the body. For Nietzsche, the victory of slave morality, which he primarily identifies with Judeo-Christianity, was a catastrophe for humanity. It domesticated human beings, severed their strongest and healthiest instincts, and made us feel guilty for simply being powerful or happy. It turned us into a sick animal. It's crucial to understand this. Nietzsche isn't saying, let's be cruel bullies. He's offering a psychological critique. He's arguing that predominant Western morality is a reactive morality, born of a hatred for life and a fear of strength. It's a morality that prefers the security of the herd to the freedom of the individual. This critique forms the basis for his next grand idea. If old morality is dead and was based on the negation of life, and the death of God has plunged us into nihilism, what kind of human being can overcome this? What comes after modern man, this nihilistic last man? Nietzsche's answer is the Übermensch, often translated as Superman, but that's a poor rendering. Über means over or beyond. It's the Overman or the beyond man. It's not a biological or racial concept. It's a spiritual ideal, a goal for humanity. The Overman is the human being who has overcome nihilism. They no longer need an external authority, God, the state, tradition, to tell them how to live. They are the creator of their own values, values that are rooted in the affirmation of life, in the will to power as creativity. Nietzsche introduces the Overman in his most poetic work, Thus Spoke Zarathustra. Zarathustra is the prophet who descends from the mountain to teach humanity this new ideal. But people aren't ready. They laugh at him. They prefer the last man, the one who seeks comfort above all else. The last man is Nietzsche's warning. It's the human being who has found happiness in mediocrity. We invented happiness, says the last man, blinking. There's no risk, no passion, no great loves or great sufferings. There's only comfort and a long life. For Nietzsche, this is hell on earth. The Overman, in contrast, embraces risk, suffering, and chaos. Why? Because they understand these are necessary for growth, for great creativity. One must have chaos within oneself to give birth to a dancing star, writes Nietzsche. The Overman doesn't seek happiness, they seek greatness. To illustrate this path, Zarathustra speaks of the three metamorphoses of the spirit. These are three stages to reach the Overman. The spirit must first become a camel. The camel represents the spirit of obedience, the one that carries the heavy values of tradition and duty. It says you should. It bears the weight of slave morality, kneeling to receive its burden. It's a necessary stage of discipline, but it's not the end. In the deepest desert, the camel transforms into a lion. The lion is the spirit of rebellion. Its word is I will. The lion no longer obeys, instead it destroys. It confronts the great dragon, which has you shall written on each of its golden scales. The lion represents active nihilism. It is freedom from something. It destroys old values, clears the ground. It's the necessary critical fury that frees us from the chains of tradition. But destroying isn't enough. The lion can create freedom, but it cannot create new values. For that, the third metamorphosis is needed. The spirit of the lion must become a child. Why a child? Because the child is innocence and forgetting. It's a new beginning, a game, a self-propelled wheel, a first movement, a sacred ye-saying. The child is the Overman in their creative state. They no longer bear the burden of the past, camel, nor fight against it, lion. They simply create. They play the game of creation, affirming life with a sacred ye-saying. It is the will to power expressed as pure creativity and self-reinvention. The Overman, therefore, is not a tyrant. They are an artist of life. They are the person who takes the suffering, loss, and chaos of nihilism and transforms them into something beautiful. They are the one who dances on the edge of the abyss. It is a goal, not a reality. It is the direction Nietzsche gives us. But Nietzsche knew that this transformation required a final test. An idea so heavy it could either crush us or redeem us. This is his deepest and most mysterious thought, the eternal recurrence of the same. In The Gay Science, Nietzsche presents this as a question, a thought experiment. He calls it the heaviest weight. What if, he asks, a demon were to appear to you in your loneliest solitude and say to you, this life, as you now live it and have lived it, you will have to live once more and innumerable times more? And the demon continues, and there will be nothing new in it, but every pain and every joy and every thought and sigh and everything unutterably small or great in your life will have to return to you, all in the same succession and sequence. How would you react? Would you not throw yourself down and gnash your teeth and curse the demon who spoke thus? Or have you once experienced a tremendous moment when you would have answered him, you are a god, and never have I heard anything more divine? It's crucial to understand this. Nietzsche isn't proposing eternal recurrence as a cosmological or scientific theory. He doesn't care if it's physically true. It's the ultimate psychological test. It's the question that separates the Overman from the last man. The eternal recurrence is the formula for the ultimate affirmation of life. If you had to repeat your life exactly the same for all eternity, would that force you to live differently now? Would it compel you to make decisions you could affirm forever? The person who despairs at this idea is one who lives with regret, who wishes things were different, who denies parts of their life. It's the spirit of resentment which says no to what was. This person is crushed by the eternal recurrence. But the Overman, the spirit who has achieved the innocence of the child, is the one who can say yes to this idea. They are the one who practices amor fati, another key Nietzschean phrase. Amor fati means love of one's fate. Not just enduring what happens, but loving it. To love one's fate means to love everything that has made you who you are, your triumphs and your failures, your joys and your worst sufferings. The Overman sees that everything is connected, that you cannot remove a single piece of your past without destroying the present you love. Therefore, they say yes to everything. Thus, the eternal recurrence is the ultimate test. Can you live in such a way that you would wish this precise moment to repeat forever? It's a radical ethic. It compels you to live with absolute intensity and responsibility. Every decision becomes an eternal decision. And so the three concepts unite. The death of God creates nihilism. The will to power is the vital force to overcome it. The Overman is the goal, the creator of new values. And the eternal recurrence is the test the Overman must pass, the definitive affirmation of life, amor fati. Now we must address the darker side, the legacy. Nietzsche collapsed in 1889. His writings fell into the hands of his sister, Elisabeth Förster Nietzsche. Elisabeth was a fierce German nationalist and anti-Semite, everything Friedrich despised. She saw an opportunity to turn her now famous but helpless brother into the prophet of her own ideology. She compiled his unpublished notes and released them under the title The Will to Power, a book Nietzsche never intended to write in that form. She edited, rearranged, and distorted it to fit German nationalism. Decades later, supporters of that National Socialist ideology found their philosopher in this falsified version of Nietzsche. The German leader at the time visited Elisabeth's Nietzsche archive and was photographed admiring his bust. The Overman became the ideal of a master race. The will to power became the justification for war and domination based on lineage. This is the greatest tragedy in the history of philosophy. The man who wrote anti-Semitism is the envy of the soul, and who broke with his friend Wagner over the latter's anti-Semitism was turned into an anti-Semitic icon. The man who despised the state and the herd was used by the most totalitarian regime in history. Nietzsche was a radical individualist. His Overman was a spiritual ideal of self-overcoming, not a racial eugenics plan. His master morality was a critique of the culture of his time, not a call to oppress the weak. He was diagnosing, not advocating. After World War II, Nietzsche's reputation was in ruins. It took a generation of scholars like Walter Kaufmann and French philosophers to clear his name. They had to return to the original texts, undo Elisabeth's falsifications, and rediscover the real Nietzsche. What then is his true legacy? What remains of the authentic Nietzsche today? His influence is immense. He is the father of existentialism. Philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus took the death of God as their starting point. Camus, in particular, grapples with nihilism in The Myth of Sisyphus. Sisyphus, condemned to push a boulder uphill for eternity, only to see it roll back down. It's the image of the absurd. But Camus concludes, one must imagine Sisyphus happy. It's a perfect echo of Nietzsche's amor fati, affirming life even in its absurdity. Nietzsche is also a precursor to psychoanalysis. Sigmund Freud admitted that Nietzsche had a more penetrating self-knowledge than any man who ever lived or is likely to live. Nietzsche's idea that our conscious motives are just the surface and that beneath them lie instincts and drives, the will to power, is the very foundation of depth psychology. And later, postmodern philosophers like Michel Foucault and Jacques Derrida drew upon Nietzsche. His genealogy of morality inspired Foucault to analyze how power creates truth in prisons, hospitals, and society. Nietzsche's idea that everything is interpretation was fundamental to postmodernism. But beyond academia, Nietzsche's legacy is personal. He is a philosopher who speaks directly to us. He challenges us to examine our own lives. Are we living as camels, lions, or children? Are we creating our own values or merely accepting those of the herd? He asks us, are you a spectator of your life or are you the artist? Do you let your suffering define you or do you use it as material to create something new? He is the philosopher of self-overcoming and radical responsibility. You cannot blame God, society, or your parents. You are responsible for creating the meaning of your own existence. Of course, Nietzsche is not without his critics. His aphoristic style, writing in fragments and parables, makes him incredibly easy to misinterpret, as history proved. At times, his rhetoric is so violent and aristocratic that it's difficult to digest. Can we really discard all morality of compassion? Is his ideal of the solitary Overman truly desirable? Or are human connection, empathy, and community, values he sometimes dismissed as weakness, what truly give life meaning? This is a valid critique to level against him. His critique of slave morality can be seen as a defense of the strong over the weak. Although he saw it as a psychological critique, it's undeniable that his language can sound elitist and cruel. He forces us to ask whether compassion is a genuine virtue or a form of disguised resentment. However, reading Nietzsche isn't about agreeing with him. It's about using him as a catalyst. He is, as he himself said, dynamite. He's designed to blow up our certainties. Nietzsche's value isn't in his answers, but in the audacity and depth of his questions. He teaches us to be suspicious, to apply the art of mistrust. When someone tells you what is good or true, Nietzsche whispers in our ear, who benefits from this truth? What kind of will to power hides behind this morality? In a modern world full of ideologies, fake news, group pressures, and the last man's pursuit of easy comfort, Nietzsche's voice is more relevant than ever. It's a wake-up call, a call to intellectual courage and authenticity. He asks us to be free spirits. The free spirit is one who dares to think differently, who risks their comfort, their friendships, and even their reputation for the sake of their own truth, their own life project. It's a solitary task, but for Nietzsche, it's the only one worth undertaking. So let's recap our journey. We started with the death of God, the diagnosis that our moral foundation had crumbled, leaving us in the abyss of nihilism. We saw that traditional morality for Nietzsche was a slave morality born of resentment which denied life. We saw that the fundamental force of the universe is the will to power, an impulse for growth and self-overcoming. This force is the engine for creating new values. The Overman is the ideal, the artist of life who achieves this transvaluation of all values, passing through the metamorphoses of the camel, the lion, and the child. And finally, we saw the ultimate test, the eternal recurrence. The ability to say yes to your life with all its pain and joy, so completely that you would wish to repeat it forever. It is the ultimate expression of amor fati, the love of one's fate, which is the hallmark of the Overman. We also confronted the tragic distortion of his work by the Nazis and distinguished it from his real legacy in existentialism and modern thought. We saw a philosopher who is not a prophet of hatred, but a prophet of individual self-overcoming. Nietzsche remains one of the most stimulating and dangerous figures in thought. He doesn't give us a system. He doesn't give us easy rules. He gives us a mirror and a hammer. The mirror to examine ourselves and the hammer to shatter the prisons we've built in our own minds. He is the philosopher who tells us that life without a given meaning is not a tragedy, but an opportunity. It is a blank canvas. The will to power isn't the desire to dominate others, but the desire to master the canvas of our own lives and turn them into a work of art. The question Nietzsche leaves us with, the question I want to leave you with today is this: are you living a life that you would want to repeat for all eternity? If the answer is no, what are you going to do about it? What idols do you need to break? And what new dancing star needs to be born from the chaos you carry within? We don't have to accept all his conclusions. We can and should retain compassion and connection, but we cannot ignore his challenge, the challenge to live deliberately, to create our own values, and to give a resounding yes to the totality of our existence. Nietzsche isn't the end of philosophy, but he is the end of philosophical innocence. After him, we can no longer pretend that our values are absolute or that we aren't responsible for them. He has given us the most terrifying and most glorious freedom, the freedom to create ourselves. His legacy ultimately isn't in his books, but in the reader. It's in the moment we close the book and ask ourselves, am I living courageously? Am I affirming my life? Am I ready to be the poet of my own existence? That is the Nietzsche that matters. In conclusion, Friedrich Nietzsche offers us one of the most radical and vital philosophies ever conceived. He teaches us that overcoming nihilism doesn't come from finding a new God, but from becoming creators ourselves. He asks us to dance with life rather than merely endure it. He shows us that the will to power, in its highest form, isn't tyranny, but the creativity that transforms suffering into beauty. That the Overman isn't a despot, but an artist. And that the eternal recurrence isn't a curse, but the ultimate blessing for one who has loved their fate. Reading Nietzsche is dangerous, yes, but it's like the danger of climbing a great mountain. The risk is high, a fall is possible, but the view from the summit, the perspective it gives you on your own life, changes everything forever. It's a journey well worth taking. Thank you for joining me on this intense journey through Nietzsche's thought. He's not a philosopher who offers easy answers, but one who compels us to ask the most difficult questions. He's strong medicine, but perhaps medicine we need now more than ever. Truly, thank you for your time. If this analysis has made you think, please consider subscribing for more philosophical explorations. And I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments below. Which of Nietzsche's ideas resonates most with you, or which disturbs you the most? Until next time, curious minds.